us and not speaking on behalf of the DA's office tonight, speaking as John Lewin, the experienced lawyer. John, first I wanted to give you an opportunity, your reaction to this announcement and this development in the Menendez brothers case.
So, Vinny, George Gascon's been around for almost 4 years, and every time I think that he's done the most extraordinary, irresponsible, derelict action, he surprises me and does another one. So I think what's important to understand is that, first of all, resentencing is very important. I myself did one of the first prosecutor-initiated resentencings on one of my original cases because new information came that demonstrated that it was a voluntary manslaughter and not a murder. And we're in the business of making sure that justice is done. But what happened in this case? George Gascon had this petition for more than a year and a half. All of a sudden, and I think the background's important, this has not been covered much in the media. There's a terrible case out here in Los Angeles of a woman, a juvenile, that George Gascon, she murdered 2 people. George Gascon refused to prosecute her as an adult. She did a short time in juvenile, got out and murdered somebody else. George Gascon was notified that the LA Times was doing a front page story. And literally the next day he put out a press release saying that he was going to hold a news conference the same day as this article on the Menendez case. He holds a news conference, and in the end, because apparently he couldn't decide what he was going to do, he did nothing. It was the equivalent of when Geraldo Rivera opened Al Capone's vault and it was empty. So since that time, Gascon, instead of talking to the lawyers who are working on the case, decided that he was going to use the Menendez case, as he's been using all kinds of other cases, including one yesterday even, to get himself some free publicity. He doesn't have any campaign money, and he's trailing by 30 points in an election that happens in a week and a half. And then he's going to hold a press conference, and he's going to announce that he is going to resentence in this case. And let's look at what resentencing is. Resentencing, the Menendez brothers, first of all, under California, they were what are called youthful offenders. They were under 26. They did not have criminal histories. They have done what we call good programs in state prison, and they've been there for more than 30 years. That would be enough for Gascon to go into court and to say, listen, I think they should be resentenced. It would not be my position, because part of it is, have they been rehabilitated? And everybody wants to automatically assume that these allegations of molestation are true. And I'm going to tell you, Vinny, these allegations of molestation, what are they based on? They're based on a photocopy of a letter, undated, that was allegedly found in 2015, was not filed until 8 years later. And that letter, which apparently was sent to Eric's cousin, detailing molestation and allegedly written 8 months before the murders, except for one little problem. Eric and the cousin both testified and never mentioned this letter. The cross-examination was suggesting they were making it up. But instead of saying, oh no, we've got a letter that proves this, wow, they never mentioned the letter. Why is that, Vinny? Well, the reasonable interpretation would be they didn't mention the letter because it had not been written yet.
Wow.
But why would we suspect the Menendez boys of fabricating evidence? Well, because if you look at the Court of Appeals opinion and the opinion from the Ninth Circuit, the courts found that Lyle Menendez had repeatedly attempted to fabricate evidence in this case. So here's the problem. One, you got a resentencing that's based on abuse that has not been documented or proved. Instead of George Gascon doing a complex and thorough investigation, he rushes this thing through so that he can attempt to salvage his doomed re-election campaign. And then he holds a press conference before he's even gone into court. Apparently, he's now posting Kim Kardashian comments. I'm sure Rosie O'Donnell is next. What kind of office is this? What kind of prosecutor is this? So in the end, whether or not this is a legitimate resentencing, the judge needs to have all of the evidence in the case. And I can tell you,
will the judge, before we run out of time, I'm going to run out of time here, John, but
Sure.
will the judge hear two sides to this?
Well, that's interesting. Unfortunately, the prosecutor who you heard speaking today, Nancy Theberge, who Gascon couldn't even pronounce her name, she was a public defender until a year ago. She was brought over, so she'll come in as basically a defense lawyer, and he's going to have his defense lawyers in there. And the question is going to be, how much of a complete record will the judge get? I don't know. That is certainly a legitimate concern. I guess we will find out, Vinny.
We will find out. John Lewin, thanks so much for the time and some perspective.